one of the NFT groups that I'm in, they had this thing where you could build like your own version of the NFTs. So they had people like making their own versions and submitting them as like their own artwork.
Okay.
And people submitted like hundreds and maybe thousands of them because each person could do 5 a day. And so, and there was 4 days that the thing went on.
Okay.
So
And you submitted artwork?
yeah, I did. Just because it was fun to do. And so then they picked 4 people to win, or the algorithm did, I guess, pick the 4 people or some little like slot machine thing. And I was one of them. So like my submissions went into this pile and then people voted on that. And so out of like my, I don't know, 15 to 20 submissions, the top 8, I have 6 of the top 9 are
Oh,
mine.
really? Are you
Yeah.
serious? Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, dude, I think you're really well placed to. It's kind of interesting because when with NFTs and crypto in general, it's a back end technology. It's like it's the like the roads and the infrastructure of all this stuff that's digital, and
Mhm.
NFTs are starting out with the initial like wedge into the general consciousness is art, right? But I think Chris Dixon is explaining like, and there's a podcast where they talk about how it's like a primitive, it's like a piece of paper, and you can
Yeah.
put anything on it.
Yeah.
You can put Shakespeare on it. You can put a deed to a house on it. You can put art on it. And so it's funny that your front end quote unquote technology is like music and art and all this other stuff, but like because of NFTs and crypto, you're like learning the back end. So it's interesting. You have the ability to kind of uh, you know use like you're kind of like vertically integrated in the whole space, both all the way at the user end and then also the back end.
that that's interesting. I never thought of that.
Yeah, I don't think people in the art communities generally think about the full distribution of like from of like how does something like leave their brains and their mouth all the way to where it's consumed and the whole chain that goes along until it like reaches there, and then how many people's hands are taking little slices out. Distribution is
Yeah.
everything, honestly.
Yeah, I'm learning that. I'm definitely learning that. And now I'm seeing a lot of market forces and how they play and and how people manipulate them too. And
Yes, the whole rug pulling. So okay, let's get into it. What happened in the last week, and what have you been up to?
well, I've joined this group and this it's like the dragons NFT, and the people in this are some of the biggest people in Solana world. Like
Explain what the Dragons NFT is.
it's
I
called
really don't know anything.
it's called Bo Ryoku Dragons, and it's a dragons project, NFT project that dropped like a week and a half ago.
Is
No,
that
a
the
week
is that
ago.
the NFT you got? That's your character now on your screen. Is
Yeah,
what does it like come with a number? Like Punk 6529? Is it like that?
yeah, it does, but I
What's
don't.
your number?
I think it's 463. Yeah.
Ah, okay, okay,
So, but like I don't know. I just have like I have one really rare attribute in the picture, and it's the
okay.
rainbow puke. It's like throwing up a rainbow.
Oh, that's funny, dude. It's
So
gonna be hilarious when when the geriatric Congress like calls up, someone has cornered some NFT market, and they're gonna have like hearings in front of Congress, and there's gonna be like, so explain to me what did you say? What's special about your NFT, and why does it have so much money? You're like, well, mine has rainbow puke, whereas nobody else's has rainbow puke.
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to explain it to people. That's what I've been doing all week too, is explaining it to people and them kind of laughing. This one guy said, so it basically sounds like you're in crypto yakuza.
When you're getting into it, like, everybody's kind of new into crypto. I mean, I'm sure, and especially NFTs, but I'm sure everybody has this imposter syndrome because they're like becoming an expert into it just by like dedicating time and working in it and all this stuff. But then also, uh, uh, when you're talking to someone who hasn't done anything in it, because we're in such a I feel like I haven't learned at such a steep curve since I went to college, like when I was 18. I have not had such a like massive learning curve as that back in the day. Yeah, I'm sure you feel it. Like that's why you and I are like, we can feel the vibe where we're like, oh my God, our brains are like going in 100 directions.
Yeah, yeah. And now that like I'm in this really high level group with some of the biggest people in like crypto in general, much less the Solana world, uh, like it's kind of a window into the inner workings of the space that a lot of people don't really get to see.
Yeah, explain that.
And
You said there were some whales or some ballers in the group. I don't know how you describe them.
I think like I consider them to be like some of the biggest like PR like crypto influencers, I guess, in the Solana space.
It's like
In like
Tom from
Twitter.
MySpace. It was like when MySpace first came out and you were actually like, you're like, oh, I'm friends with Tom or whatever. It's so
Yeah,
early. So there's like
it's
whales, and then this whole thing has been around for like 8 months or whatever. And
this thing has been around for a week.
um, uh, what is it called? Dragon Z?
The Boryoku Dragons project. Yeah.
Boryoku Dragons. Okay.
Yeah.
I keep my brain wants to mix the two, like Dragon Ball Z and
Yeah.
Boryoku Dragons.
They probably did that on purpose.
Okay. So tell me about it.
But I mean, they kind of set this precedent with the way that they launched the project. And a lot of times the projects will say, this day is when we mint the project, and this day at this time. So everyone knows like it's exactly happening at this time on this day. And this is the supply. So everybody knows like the supply. And then, so this project didn't do any of that. They said they didn't really release any information. And if you were kind of, I would say like an intermediate crypto person, you weren't like a brand new beginner or an older person, but if you were like an intermediate person, you might have engaged with it, but you also might have stayed away from it because it might have looked sketchy
Okay.
because like very little information. And they named two of the artists, the people a part of the project, and one of them is like a more well-known artist in this space, I guess. And then like they did this crazy event where you had to do all these different things in their Discord to like actually get to the mint link to actually
Okay.
mint it. And they're including like crapping on their own project in the server, saying like this is a scam, this is a rug, like telling people like to get out.
Wait. Okay, so maybe I just got lost in what you were telling me, but I remember you telling me that part of the issue is that there's all these bots that are buying up NFTs, and so what people are doing in the Discords is creating almost like human specific verbal puzzles to make it very difficult for bots to decipher. So it's explain. So that's what's the really why what explains this crazy behavior, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's bots out there that are buying up NFTs like automatically, and so what happens is the ecosystem is at a huge disadvantage if it's just like a couple of programmers hoarding NFTs,
Hmm.
because the value is in like a shared, people are imbuing this art with value because of the community and the feelings around it. If it's one guy who like if like one guy had all of the impressionist paintings in his basement, like I doubt, as great as impressionist art is, Monet, Manet, and all those people, if one guy just had them all just stored in his thing, the wider public wouldn't have access to it and appreciate it and then cultivate value in their minds and hearts related to that art. So then the art
Yeah,
doesn't have value if people can't, uh, they imbue it with value, with nostalgia and with sentiment and all these emotional things associated with art. So
hmm,
in my mind, it's not the same. You could maybe have like, you could say like, okay, there might be market efficiency in having auto trading, fast executing, like bots can be useful in some areas, right? If you have like a trading system or whatever, right, at your own risk. Like I have no problem with like like what I noticed in the last 20 years, and there's a book that might be writing about this. I don't know if anybody described it exactly like this. There's this book called The Second Machine Age, and they were talking about how, I don't know, I can't remember if this anecdote came from that book, but basically how there were supply side algorithms by the airlines that have revenue management, where like you're sitting in seat 1A and you're paid $200 for a ticket, but someone sitting in 1B might be paid 400 and 1C might be paid 50. And the reason the
yeah,
price discrimination is based on all kinds of factors, right?
yeah, yeah,
Time and whatever, right? Uh, Whereas then you had these consumer algorithms, which was like back in the day, Travelocity, then Expedia, and Google Flights, and all these things, where it was, okay, the airlines have their revenue management algorithms that are trying to maximize their revenue, and consumers now have their consumer algorithms that are trying to find the best deals. And so we're each equally equipped with algorithms to, and we basically, it's like a stalemate where we're both getting, we're like equally matched, right? Consumers and suppliers. Now in other spaces, like it's not, it hasn't evolved that way yet. And so like that was just our little subtext to this whole like human versus bot war. It's like right now
hmm,
we've got people who are technically very proficient who are generating bots. I mean, at the end of the day, these are still humans with
hmm.
tools. Like
Yeah,
I think sometimes the mind likes to make it up like as if there's some sort of like nefarious AI person or thing, entity that's doing. No, no, these are human beings that are using tools to do to achieve some sort of market objectives. And so you've got uh, artists or whatever who are using other tools that they have at their disposal because they may not have bot tools or whatever, but whatever it is, this is the technique that they're using. So sorry, go ahead.
yeah.
Tell me what's the, how do they do it?
I mean, I don't know like the specifics behind the bot attacks, but I just know that everyone's trying to come up with different techniques and strategies to like avoid getting botted, as it's called, when it's just like all the bots come attack and like ruin your mint.
So explain what getting botted is, and then what are all the techniques you had to go through in this specific example?
I mean, I'm sure like somebody who's actually like launched a project could tell you something more, but based
No,
on
man,
my
I want your experience.
I mean, my experience has been when you get to that time where the launch is about to happen, when it's a scheduled launch and everybody knows it's on this date at this time with this supply, that everything, the chats start going crazy and like everything starts like with just like notifications after notifications. The chats just
Okay.
like scroll, 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 scroll. And because people are like asking different questions or just like uh, saying different things in the chat and like trying to basically, and then the people in the chat are just waiting for the mint link to drop. And some people make bots that write like this project is a scam or this is a rug or whatever, and you don't know if those are real people, but it doesn't always seem the most like organic. It seems kind of
Wait,
artificial.
so you, oh, because the same way you have like Twitter bots that are using natural language to make it to just say these things to, and so you're feeling like a lot of the texts you're seeing are not actually humans.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Because that's like a
And what's the
whole other
point?
skill.
What's the
This
objective?
the objective is to get people to not mint so they can mint more, so they can like cycle through the supply faster and get to the more rare ones. Because if you get like a rare one, then you can sell that and it'll make up for all the other crappy ones that
The
you
winners pay for the
mint.
losers. So the explain what does this mean by mint? So there's an organization, Dragon. What is it called?
The Boryoku dragons. Yeah.
Boryoku Dragon. Tell me how does their process work? They how did you find out about them from initially?
This one was a little more stealthy. They literally call it a stealth launch, where instead of giving any information or doing any marketing, they didn't do anything. They didn't tell anybody. The only way you could find out about it was through like certain people who had found the project organically and then shared the links on in their groups.
In
And
their
so
discords?
yeah, in their discords. So that's how I found out about it. Somebody shared it in one of the discords I was in, and I just happened to look at it, and I just happened to like really pay attention
Can,
on
can,
the day.
can I tell you, like, this gives me the vibe. I don't the image that flashes to my head I is speakeasy bars. Do you know what I mean? Like, it gives me
Yes,
the vibe,
yes,
like, the
yes,
harder it is, the more fun it is, and the more
yes,
cool it is. Like, the
yeah.
harder it is to get to something, the more exclusive it feels, and the more
Mhm.
like they make it hard for you. It's like those Buddhist temples that are on the top of the mountain and you have to go up 10,000 steps, because once you get there, you're like, oh, this temple, you always feel nirvana. It's like, no shit, you just climbed like for 5 hours. You the relief of getting to the goal is the nirvana you're feeling. But this is really my impression when you're describing it. I'm like, this, like, going through 50 like secret doors to finally get to the where the party's at, where all these NFTs are at. And that's what it
Mhm.
feels like, which is part
Mhm.
of uh, uh, what would generate like a sense of like value for this art, because you had to
Yes.
effing go through hell to get it.
Yes, yeah, and they were really smart. Like the developers of this project, I could tell right away that they had a very specific strategy on what they were doing every step of the way, and they were like being confusing on purpose to kind of weed people out. Even if they were like normal people, like you had to be patient, you had to be knowledgeable of how to use Discord and understand the language, and because there's a whole language to these spaces and
Explain
there's
the
a whole
language. We've
flow.
already mentioned two. Okay, we've got rugged and we've got botted. Rugged
Yeah.
is short for rug pulling, which is an analogy for pumping and dumping, right? Like, you
Yeah.
pump up a coin and then you dump it or something, or what? You take people's money and then you disappear. That's rug pull, right?
Well, rug
Rugged.
pull, yeah, rug pull is like when the developers do that. So it's like when they just scam you basically.
Well,
It's
how
another.
would a typical rug pull be? You send them money and they just run away. What would you do?
No, they create some like crappy little project that with like clip art or some little dinky thing, and they use all the marketing buzzwords in the space like DAO and like royalties and like
Okay,
video game
and then you buy
characters,
it.
and then they get people to buy it and they pay people to shill it. Shill is
Okay,
another
yeah,
term.
yeah.
And and then those people get other people to pump it up, and then everyone gets all excited, and then they schedule the launch so everybody knows like this is when it happened.
Okay.
and then everybody goes and mints it. And sometimes, sometimes those developers have written a smart contract to literally suck everything out of your wallet when you mint it.
Oh, so it's actually
Or
like a virus almost.
or they just you mint it for something and you actually get the NFT, but then the project developer just closes the Discord, shuts down the Twitter, disappears into nothingness.
Okay, and so in your mind, so I'm not saying this is good or bad, but the way you're describing rugs is if someone creates NFTs and art but doesn't maintain the community, right? Like let's say Picasso goes to Sotheby's. Let's say Picasso was around today and he sold his art at Sotheby's, and you know how they have like galleries and everybody goes and whatever, right? And everybody
Yeah.
wants to chill with Picasso, right? And so he sells this thing at Sotheby's and then he disappears. Would that be an ancient version of rug, or this is completely different because part of the understanding is that you're maintaining a community? Because don't you, if you get the NFTs, how can you say you're being rugged?
Oh, this is the thing, is like it's usually more of what they promise in the first place. Like, oh, we're
Oh, the
gonna give you,
royalties.
yeah, or whatever's in the roadmap. The roadmap is like the
Oh,
plan of
oh,
the
much
project.
more than just the initial. The NFT is just
Yeah.
step one of a much larger
Yes.
thing. Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense. That's like a
Yeah.
classic fraud.
Yep. 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 Exactly.
Okay,
And
okay.
so there's certain ways that you can, after a while, you start to recognize those patterns and see that like there's some sketchy things out there. And
Confidence man, the shillers, the promoters, like the
yeah.
Don Kings of the world, of the NFT
Yeah.
world, the
Yep.
Zillennial Don Kings who are just like pumping like marketing stuff. And dude, it's gonna be
Yeah.
really interesting because the Instagram world and the NFT world are just starting to meet, and they
Yep.
haven't fully gone hardcore, right? Like, so we had in the last decade, you know, when Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion, like in 2012, 9 years ago, it was like this shock in the tech world because they were like, how can a 12-person photo app be worth $1 billion? And meanwhile, later, like 10 years later, almost, it's like, oh, that was a steal of the century. They bought it for $1 billion. Instagram is probably worth like 500 billion or
Yeah.
800 billion. It's like the majority of Facebook's net worth is probably just in Instagram. And so like, or at least half. And but what we didn't realize is, okay, this new paradigm of like image-based social media comes up, and then a person who was on a reality show who she made a cameo appearance in Paris Hilton's like reality show on MTV, releases a porn tape with Ray J, she then becomes the most famous Instagrammer, and then launches her own products and becomes a billionaire herself. I'm talking about Kim Kardashian, the great reveal, right? This was the arc of her story, right? And so she was like I think she's either number one or one of the top Instagrammers, right? But she became
Yeah.
famous for using this new medium to generate, like, she was capturing what propelled her to stardom was using internet porn, and then what took her like the other two steps above that was she was capturing a lot of attention on Instagram, but then converted that attention into not just endorsing, but actually like equity stakes and ownership, and all her family. I think one of her sisters owns like a makeup line and is theoretically some sort of billionaire or something. But Balaji actually talks about like how influencers are going to be like a subset of venture capital, in that like getting attention to your products, it's no longer that you're just going to hire someone to endorse your product. Like the endorser is driving a ton of the value, and so they're going to want equity stakes and things like that, which brings me back to this whole NFT roadmap and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So okay, let's plow ahead. We've got rug pulled, we've got botted, I think we've covered botted. And what we've got shilling, and anything else?
Yeah, I think more of it, maybe not necessarily individual terms, but more just like general practices and maybe just patterns that you see. Because another thing that I've learned is that they use memes a lot, and memes are like, they're a form of expression and they're a form of communication, but they're also a form of PR and marketing for individual NFT projects.
Worse, right?
So
What is the Nike swoosh, right?
yeah.
And there's this
Yeah.
whole idea that like, why are there images and pictures on the dollar bill? The dollar is a meme, right? It
Mm-hmm.
was like, why are you putting pyramids and George Washington's face on it? Why doesn't it just say like in text $1, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why does, because it's a meme, right? It's imagery associated to like convey an idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And so seeing those practices like be coordinated through the different groups is kind of crazy, because everyone kind of decides as a group, like, we're going to buy this project. And for sometimes for a utility, sometimes just because they think they can control a supply and then like corner that market. Sometimes it's for other reasons, like they want to pump up that project because they just all bought it. Like other times it's just people sharing information and maybe not like specifically coordinating together, but just like, hey, this is what I found, and like you can look at it yourself, but this is why I like it, and this is the positives that I see, and then everyone can go vote on those projects too. Like,
in
yes, we'll do
in
this.
in the Discord, they like
Yeah,
voting, what, how, like with
yeah.
emojis, or they put up like an actual vote like the way Twitter votes,
No,
like,
it's like, yeah. It's
Musk
more
had
like
his like
emojis.
Twitter vote poll where he was like, should I sell 10% of Tesla stock? He did this last week. Yeah, is it
Yeah.
like that?
No, it's just the emoji reactions to the messages,
Oh, okay, so
basically.
what, a poop emoji is no, and like a smiley emoji is yes?
Maybe in some, but in the one that I'm in, it's like green and red, and
Oh,
like
green is
maybe, or
go, red is
yellow.
no.
Yeah, or yellow is like undecided.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Oh, this
you
is
and
so interesting. And the one of the reasons I find it so interesting to like record our Zooms and like just put this stuff out there is because you're going through it with fresh eyes. And so
mm,
you're noticing all these like, do you know what this word mimetic means? Like mimetic
mhm,
behaviors. Like you're noticing like these trends take off and like the culture of how to behave and what's going on, and all the old scams are just being redone in on Discord and NFTs, and then also everybody's like redoing like ancient scams, and they think that they're the first ones. They don't realize that this like they didn't just invent this like rug pulling scam or whatever, but like they're
yeah,
discovering it, and you don't even know how old these people are who you're dealing with. They could be like teens, or they could
yep,
be in their 80s. You don't even, I mean,
yep.
unlikely, but yeah.
Yeah, and so like finding out, like I kind of, that scene in the Matrix where like the operators are just looking at the screens, and it's like the, what's it called, the hexadecimal
Oh, when
code,
it's like
or
the code is going up
yeah,
and down like Chinese
uh-huh,
code or whatever, and
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
in green and black. Yeah,
yeah, it's an actual code, and I forget what it's called, but that's kind of what I feel like Discords are sometimes, is you are just looking at all these information and you're looking at the flow of them, and you go back, like certain ones, you want to go back and see what people were talking about, and if any information that you think might be relevant was discussed. And so that's where like the different level of the groups comes in, because there sometimes are groups where it's just a bunch of like people who just got into the space,
yeah.
or
Yes.
maybe some intermediate people, and like they just like the art, or they're attracted to it by,
And
maybe it has
you
some
need all the
utility.
people. You need everybody, and everybody's going to come at it at their own pace. It's like the gym, it's like making fun of some
Hmm.
guy who's like skinny or whatever, and you're like,
Hmm.
dude, this guy is just getting started. It's not like Schwarzenegger was the way he was day one. Like that was like
Yeah,
decades of work or whatever.
yeah.
And but it is interesting because I get information overloaded. So I'll join all these groups, all these discords out of enthusiasm, and I immediately my brain gets spam overload, and I just leave the
Yep.
discords
Yep.
because I can't. And that's why what you're doing, in my opinion, is basically like a full-time job. Like, it is a job to read and process all that information. I was actually thinking
Mhm.
about, back in my PhD days, writing a paper that talks about, like, we talk about like labor in the sense of like, all the old economics textbooks and stuff would always refer to like labor as like a physical thing. And then we also talk about like getting paid based on time, right? Like a
Mhm.
security guard gets paid or like whatever. I've always thought, and we have some tangential like bank shot a concept of like of this idea, which is, I've always thought, we don't really have a good way of measuring this, but I always thought, for me, my brain processing ability is not exactly connected to time. It is, if you're asking me to concentrate on something, that could be more, or it's like sprinting versus walking, and I'm going to get way more tired trying to process something new. Or like, you have when you're driving, you're on like autopilot in your brain and you're not even thinking about it, versus like learning a new language. When I would go to like, in college, I got dropped into France, and the first like month, I would concentrate super hard on every word people were saying to me because it was new, and my brain was exhausted. And so like
Yeah.
I don't even know how to describe it. I was thinking about writing a paper called like synapse cost. Like, we have caloric, we can see like how many calories you burn by like doing labor or whatever, like working out or laying brick, but we don't have like a way to like honestly measure like how much are you costing someone's brain energy, you know? And
Yeah.
that's really what the knowledge economy and whatever you're trying to do is like, you're literally sitting there scanning all these discords, and half of the communication might not even be humans. It's like you're filtering through bots, you know?
Yeah. And then you have a lot of people who, like, some people literally call them normies, and they're the people who don't really know that much, and they're just excited, and they're just like, oh, jumping into the space, and they're brand new, and maybe they don't want to learn in such great detail. They're just trying to do it because they think it's fun. But the people who really do it as their job, it's they have this really high level of information flow between them, and they all understand the culture because they've been in it for years and years and years. So they're all friends, or they all at least like coordinate together in some way.
Yeah, I mean, that the community aspect of it, I think it does make sense to uh, maybe have like a loose coalition of people that can. I mean, that's kind of what you and I are doing, is like, we're covering different areas and then exchanging information. Be like, this is what I learned and what I studied this week, and this is you telling me what you learned this week. And so like, there's too much to. And also, when you need at least I would say at least a second pair of eyes to look at the same thing, to like check and catch what you're missing,
Mm.
until maybe, I know, maybe people develop a level of expertise where they just speed up and don't need extra people. But from my perspective, like, you need a couple of people to kind of look at things to see what you don't see.
It would definitely help, because for me, I feel like I have to do it, and then I have to go like talk about it. And so like you
Yeah.
mates me, but I talk about NFTs all the time, and like, because I'm trying to process it in my own head, and I am an external processor, so I have to like
Yeah.
talk it out, and so I can just like go back through the information that I just learned, and really like really like hold it and
Yeah.
integrate it
Yeah.
into my knowledge base.
until
So
you until you can explain it, you don't really understand it. I think there's some famous scientists who said, if you cannot explain a concept to a third grader, then you don't really understand it. Like,
well,
if you can't
yeah,
distill it correctly until and I mean, going at a high level down to a granular level and then back up to a high level on a concept, really, I had this issue when I used to teach, where I would teach some economic concept, and until I was actually explaining it, you didn't actually you realized you didn't actually understand how all the parts fit together until you had to teach it.
Yeah, yeah, and
So
it definitely helps me for sure.
so let's go back to the process with I'm sorry, my brain is fried. The dragon NFT. We're just gonna refer to it
Okay,
as the dragon NFT.
I mean, I think the biggest advantage that being in this group gives me is the level, the access to the high level information, because of these are the people with like hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter, and like they're the people that people go to say like, hey, we're doing this project, what do you think? And so they send them free stuff all the time. And then for being part of specific groups, like the top one on Solana is Solana Monkey Business.
Yeah, I
And
saw that today on and what does that mean? What's going on? There's some new thing that they were doing this last 24 hours. You see that?
oh, they created a DAO, and they're also becoming, they're using the DAO to become a validator on a node on Solana.
Oh,
So
really? But you have to
yeah,
have a monkey business NFT to become part of the DAO?
uh, yeah, I think so. They
Yeah, I
shared
was
the
trying to
link
understand
in
what
my
was going
group.
on. Oh,
They
really?
shared the link to like the DAOs so you could stake with them. So I guess you just have to have the link then,
I
or
kept
access
seeing
to
that
that
at tagging
information.
at Solana MBS, and I was like, I thought maybe it was someone who worked for Solana, or my brain was thinking
SMB.
Solana
Yeah.
SMB. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 Wait, SMB,
Yeah.
Solana Monkey Business. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
dyslexic. Uh,
Well, those that's the project it's the top one on Solana. It's the
okay.
most expensive. It's the it they do the most, they have the most like market cap. Their market cap's like 255 million or something like
How
that.
many?
And
Like each one? What's the cheapest Solana Monkey?
I think the last one, the average price when I looked at it a few days ago was like 500 Solana.
What is that?
So
Like ten thousand
like
dollars or
that's
more
like
than
a
that?
hundred
What's one
500
Solana?
Solana. One Solana like 250.
Oh, okay. So it's I don't
So
know what
like
that is.
$120,000, something like
Crazy,
that. And
crazy.
so those people are super high level, and obviously like not everybody got in the beginning. Like people are still buying and selling them now at these prices. So these are the
You know,
people who have a lot of money.
this thing is
And
so nuts that like so I got airdropped ENS coin, right? Because
yeah,
I had the .ETH. You missed it, right?
yeah, yeah.
I'm so
You
sorry.
told me about it, and I put it off. I put it off, and then I
This is the
saw that, and I was like,
problem. I know also the gas fees are so high. So it's like I'm not buying an effing email address that nobody's gonna send anything to me for, you don't have nobody's gonna be, because you knew the gas fees are so high. You're like, if it's $200 just for me to buy it, nobody's gonna send me anything on a .eth name if the transaction cost is $200. Like even if
that
they're
was
sending
my
me
problem.
$1,000, uh, uh, a bank wire would be cheaper than a $200 gas fee. And so like,
Mhm.
but when I bought it, and I'm super negative on Ethereum because of the gas fees. Like it is unusable in my opinion for like
Yeah.
95% of people. If
Yep.
unless you're transferring big money, it's still cheaper to use anything else. Like I could
Someone
FedEx
shared a
a check.
screenshot. uh, Someone shared a screenshot of a $1,500 gas fee,
Yeah, it's
something
insane,
like that.
insane. So like,
Uh,
yeah, so they airdropped a bunch of these ENS coins, and I'm like, maybe I should just flip them, but I'm just gonna hold on to it for now. And I was talking to my sister because I had told my younger sister and her husband, I was like, you guys should. This was like back in the summer, like 6 months ago, when I think gas fees were like $20 or $15, I think. And I bought my name for 5, and I think 10, 15 in gas fees. So it ended up being $20 to buy my
nice.
name. And I told them, I was like, you guys should buy all of your 2 names and then all of your kids' names. And also their names were easy to get, right? It would have been like Alex.eth or whatever. Like now it's like, hard. And so Alex got his, and then so he also got ENS coins, and so I think last time we were chatting on the Discord, it was like $50,000 worth of free ENS coins. And I was texting my sister, and I was like, "Oh, you guys should have gotten all your kids' names, because it would have been like $60,000 extra or whatever." And she was like, "Where's that money coming from? Why would that exist? Like, she's just like money out of thin air." And I'm like, "Well, it's akin to these
A
token
stock
these
dividend
yeah,
almost.
it's
Yeah.
akin to equity for early employees.
Hmm.
But here the equity is given to the people who are participating in the network. So it's
Yep.
like when Uber gave equity to their employees, it was only the management employees who would work for Uber proper. They didn't give equity to the drivers. But in
Yeah.
this case, in crypto, in Web3, the token drops are going to the people who are bringing value to the network, which is participating in the network. And
Yeah.
so the equity is in the tokens in the people who are part of the network. And so it's really like a much more fair, in my opinion. The token drops are much more fair than uh, previously, which was like you'd have this bifurcated system where the people who are coding or operations directly within the organization are getting all the equity, and some of the value you get in, like, the market of getting to work. But I participated in Airbnb 5 years before their IPO, maybe 8 years. Like, I wanted to buy in as soon as I heard about it, but I started using Airbnb whatever, like 5-6 years ago. I was like a super user, right? Like one of those big hosts. And
Wow.
if I had been able to proportionally get shares of Airbnb for how much money I generate, I'm positive I generated tens of thousands, maybe more than that, of revenue for them. And so, I was happy to generate the money because I got money for my efforts as well. But like, I was like, I felt had a huge, one of the things about the Web2 world from 2010 until 2020, basically that 10-year window, was I really felt like a massive outsider, where I could see all this, I could see what was happening on the internet through news and Twitter and whatever. And look, it's perfectly fine if someone wants to bet all their money on MySpace and they end up getting bought out by News Corp, and someone else bets all their money on Ning and it turns into nothing, and someone bet on Facebook and that became a winner. Like, I would have loved to have been able to invest in those companies when I wanted to, and I take the wins and take the losses based on my own risk profile. But it was so unfair to me. For 10 years, I was not able to participate, and I was like, I don't want to drop my entire life and move to San Francisco, and like, what am I supposed to say to Facebook? Like, can I mop your floors to get some shares? Like,
Yeah.
because they famously like gave some shares to some guy who'd like painted a mural. Did you hear about that? Some guy painted a mural on the Facebook wall, and he got like less than 1% of Facebook, and he ended up becoming like almost a billionaire. Just
Whoa.
for they paid him in like tiny amount of equity, and like when Facebook IPO'd at 100 billion, he became like a super rich. And I think it was like they made fun of it on that show Silicon Valley.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah, and that's what NFTs are doing too. And NFTs are actually like projects are like sort of becoming DeFi, and they're creating their own tokens. They're creating their own liquidity providing. Like, you can stake the tokens. You can stake the NFTs. Some of these projects are
you can
doing.
stake an NFT.
Yeah. So you could stake the NFT and like lock it to like reduce the supply and increase the value, basically. And so like with the Dragons project, what they're doing is they give us tokens every day, just like cyberkongs. And they have this thing where you can, I mean, they haven't completely released all the information, but basically they are letting you put it's called Boku is the token. And you can put your Boku into
Like Boku, the French word, like a lot.
no, like boku, it's a Japanese word. It's like another word for I when you're talking about yourself in
Oh, okay.
Japanese, but
Okay.
only as a like adolescent man or boy, I guess, like a teenage boy. Uh, I know it's
Okay.
kind of funny, but like the community voted and that's what they chose. So like, of course.
Okay. All right. It's
So
like Dishy McDish face and Bodie
yeah,
McBoat face when they like
yep,
I think the Coast Guard asked what should we name this next cutter and they called it Bodie McBoat face or
yep, yep,
something. Yeah,
yep.
yeah, crypto is Web3 is the funniest thing. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny. So like we get the token and the token you can use for breeding to create the next generation of the dragons. So
Wait, is this the
more
one
people
where
can
you're
get it.
talking about the bananas and all that, or is this a
Yeah,
separate concept?
it's similar. They're following that same pattern that the cybercons did with the bananas. They're doing something similar. And this is what makes the
So
project so valuable
the
is that,
dragons, the foundational genetic line of these dragons is how many? 1,000 NFTs.
yeah, 1,111.
They're basically okay. So like four ones.
Yeah,
They're what they're doing is they're minting this initial uh, genetic
generation they
tribe.
call them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. They're creating this tribe, and then you got one of 1,111, right?
Hmm.
And so now you own whatever what 1/1,000th basically of the genetic line, and then you can what like use it to generate dragon sperm. Is that what they call the tokens?
No, the Boku allows you to
Oh, the boku is the tokens that are the dragon's seed,
yeah, basically it's
the
like what
bananas.
they
Okay.
generate, and then you can, if you have two, you can breed them to for like another for a baby dragon that's gonna come
Okay, but
later.
here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. You have one dragon. You need to now,
Uh,
are they androgynous? You can mate with any of the other 1,000 dragons?
yeah, it's not like
Okay,
there's
so
genders.
you need to pair with another dragon. And the
Hmm.
baby, you get a 50% share of the baby.
Uh, I think what they're still trying to figure out the mechanics, and if they haven't released that information to
Oh,
us
so
yet.
there's no mating
But
yet.
no, it's not because they don't want to do it early because if they do it too early, they just flood the market and then the value drops. So they're really trying to focus on, and the same thing with Boku, like the value, the dollar value of Boku is only based on the value that people give it anyway by wanting to be a part of this NFT project
So the
and own one of these really
tokenomics of
expensive.
okay, the unit of account in this market is the boku, the
Uh,
tokenomics, quote unquote.
yes, yeah,
And the hard asset is the NFT.
yeah.
The currency is the dragon sperm. And why don't you start putting that into the Discord and then let's see if we can make it a
they
thing.
they kind of like hint at it. It's funny.
I know
Yeah,
this is so weird. Okay, so then they're tokenomics, so they're trying to like restrain the supply. How much is the
yeah.
cheapest dragon worth right now?
R- right now, the the cheapest one is 80 Solana, so like $18,000 basically.
Jesus.
Yeah,
So uh
and the project's
so what's
only
the
like a
market
week
cap?
old. 14 million.
That's crazy. So it's
And
relatively small. So the biggest one is SMB,
uh
uh, uh,
and theirs
Solana
is like
Monkey Business.
255 million or something like
So
that.
you're 2% the size. They're whatever. You're 14 million. They're 250 million.
And they've been around since September, and this project's been around for a week, which is what
That's
makes it so
crazy.
crazy.
That's
Like
crazy. So when you bought, how much did you buy it for?
because I minted and I didn't buy it on a secondary marketplace. I minted it for 1.1 Sol. So at the time it was like $260 or something like that.
and now it's worth 18,000 at least if
Yeah.
you got the cheapest one.
And I didn't. I think there's one that's listed right now that's kind of similar to mine, and it's listed for 100 Solana. So
It's $220,000.
$25,000
It's not
basically.
bad, man. That's really good.
If I wanted to sell it, but the value is in the brand and like also the
You've got
token.
you've got the breeding bull, right? So if you've got a unique if they're copied, if they're mimicking anthropomorphizing genetic behavior, right? So then you said you have a unique you have a dragon puke, that's a
Rainbow puke, yeah.
rainbow puke. So your
Yeah.
rainbow puke is a unique characteristic to your dragon, which is if someone wants that imagery in their baby dragon, they're going to need to come to you to get it.
Yep.
And so how are you going to have to, if they mimic other NFT marketplaces like the monkey business or whatever, where they've got bananas, how are they going to, are you going to negotiate more than a 50-50 split? Like, what is it, like a smart contract that like locks in ownership of the baby or what?
I think that they're probably going to end up having to do something like that, or they're going to have a way for us to buy the eggs from the people who can breed them for like maybe slightly higher than market rate, but not on the marketplaces or whatever.
Wait, can some NFTs have eggs and some have sperm or what? I don't understand.
No, it's just,
what do you mean? Where's the eggs coming from?
The egg is what produces the second generation.
Okay. So your dragon produces, you just need one, you're like, call it egg, right? Your dragon produces an egg.
So the process, as I understand it, is you accumulate the boku every day, and then once you get 840 boku, if you have 2 dragons, you can breed those and they create an egg. And that egg is what turns into the next generation thing.
Oh, wait. You're saying, okay, got it. Okay, 2 dragons produces a dragon egg.
Yeah.
800 boku to produce a dragon egg.
Yeah.
And then you've got a 3rd baby dragon.
Well, yeah, and the second generation. And you can sell those so people can become a part of the group as well. And so the value of those is going to be based on the brand, the people in the group, the hype surrounding it,
how much people want to join it. It's really the demand side. So they're managing supply side. So now it's all about demand side. And so what is driving, you're saying the coolness factor is going to drive demand.
And also the access to information, I think, is probably the biggest draw.
So they're keeping the information. Sorry, go ahead, continue.
The information is just really sorted out differently now that I'm seeing it from the normies space, and then also the high level group space like the dragons, because the people in Solana monkey business who have like hundreds and thousands of soul, they are in the dragons project because they bought into it because they saw the potential. So they all share information at this really high level, and then everybody else is just kind of jumping into it on their own. So I'll go through like a mint and I'll see like, this is what we're talking about on the Dragons channel, and it's kind of this objective perspective. And then you go into the Discord and you're like, this is what all the normal people are seeing. They're not seeing like the factors involved, because the people in this group, they know the developers, they know the project leads, or they know people who know them, and they're sharing information about the project as it happens. And because they're all watching, everybody's watching each project and seeing like, what's happening with this? Like, oh, should we do this? And this one project where that happened was, I forget what it was called, like corporate lab rats or something. And like people, they were trying to do exactly what the dragons did, and they followed a very similar process. And then they did this thing where they let the early people mint first, and the supply was only going to be like 1,000, and they let the early people mint 500 of the first 1,000. And
Oh, so
no,
they skewed the early like thing to their own people. And so
yeah,
what was the issue?
and people were paying 5 SOL for each one, which is like really a lot. That's like $1,000 right there, or twelve
Okay.
hundred dollars. Like it's
Yeah.
a lot. And
So what's the issue though? Like that's just about having more equity for if you created it, you would have more. Like if I wanted to mint 1,000 of my, orangutan business NFTs, and it was just me, wouldn't I just start with 1,000 just for myself? Or are you saying that to get are you talking about it's a problem morally? Like it's unfair that they're being so greedy? Or are you talking about strategically it's not smart because you're not leaving enough to build a network effect?
I think if you did it correctly and you were able to like control the actions of the people who bought the first half of the supply, uh, then maybe it might be a better long-term thing. But the problem was they were expecting, because of the supply, because of the demand, uh, they were expecting the price to do what the Dragons program did, which was the immediate day they launched, the floor was already 20 Solana.
Okay.
So like 20x like right then. And
Yeah.
so people were expecting the Rats one to do that. But then once they saw like, oh my gosh, like you minted half of the supply before you opened it to the public and you didn't say anything about it. It it
Oh.
it it destroyed their reputation amongst the people
Oh.
in the project, and then the confidence in the actual thing tanked, and then people paid 5 Solana for something, and the cheapest one now is like 1.3 or something. So people
This
lost
is
a
a
lot.
great lesson where you're talking to, so okay, that's the what I wanted to get at, which was it's not that you're getting greedy or not greedy, right? It's that uh, if you want to be long-term greedy versus short-term greedy, if you want to make more money over the long term, you don't do it that way like you're describing. You don't
Mhm,
pre-mint 500 for yourself and then
mhm.
mint 500 for the public
Yeah.
uh, at whatever the price. What you do is like the people in the Dragon group, which was they they had an open fair minting. They didn't keep any for themselves.
Nope. Nope.
So
And
how
even
did they?
the people who were OGs, like the people who were the first people into the project, they didn't get any special treatment.
So how did they? What was the point of doing this activity if they're not trying to generate money for themselves?
They are
Is it
doing it
like a
by,
race to mint? Isn't there like a scramble
yeah,
to mint, like
yeah, yeah,
dodgeball? Everybody's on the line and there's
yeah,
balls in the middle and everybody's running to grab as many balls as they can.
yeah. I think that's what is so interesting about this project is like they're not as, what you call it, communicative. They're very communicative, but they don't give you like all the information at once. And I actually think that's really smart because people end up using that information against projects when they just kind of lay it all
Oh,
out.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's kind
yeah.
of like this information war that people have to do. So the good thing about this project is they do the opposite of what a lot of projects do, where they say, oh, we're going to have royalties, we're going to make a DAO, we're going to give secondary market royalties, we're going to
They're
like,
promising too much early.
yeah, over promise and under deliver, or we're going to make a
Whereas this
game
one,
and
they're
like,
sandbagging. They're setting expectations low, like a comedian or whatever, and then you don't see, and then you're delighted when it's better than expectations. When your expectations are low and it's over exceeding your expectations, you're happy. This might be a classic. This might, because, right, you're dealing with art ultimately. There's the money component to it, but you still, ultimately, the demand is going to be based on art. Like the normies
that's what I hear.
The normies are driving the price, right? The normies want, okay, like unlike you, most people are not going 100%, like their full-time gig now is crypto, right? And so normies want to passively consume it and want the fun of the culture, right? Well, this is just a cultural fun thing, and that's what generates the value. We're spending so much of our time on the internet. We want like pieces of clothing that cover us on the as we travel. Chris Dixon on his podcast with the 5 Hour Workweek guy, Tim Ferriss, he was talking about how the real analogy to Web 1 and Web 2 was every time you would go to a different website, you're like putting on Facebook's clothes, and then you have to give them their identity back, and then you're going into Twitter and you have a different identity, going to XYZ, and you're constantly changing your identity clothes or whatever. And then NFTs are like, you own your clothes and you go in and out of wherever you want with your accoutrement with you. And but ultimately, that's what the supply is. Obviously, we're talking about, most of our discussion is really about how they manage supply and information and the asymmetries of information and how to manage it properly, what works, what doesn't work. But the demand side is, you're talking about high level discussions are the supply side discussions, right? And the Discord general normie discussions are really demand side discussions. And that's why you're not going to have the same conversations, because when you're going to a coffee shop, you go for you go to a nice coffee shop, or a nice restaurant, you want the experience. You don't want to be back in the kitchen. You don't want that door, when the door swings open and you see the chaos behind in the kitchen. You don't want to see that, generally speaking. I mean, there might be, so you want the experience without the mess behind the scenes. And so maybe that's probably why it does make sense to have completely different discussions in the normie groups versus the high level groups. Or I don't know. I'm not trying to justify it, but that's just how I'm thinking about it right now, at least.
No, I don't assign any like moral judgment to it. I think that it very easily could be extremely nefarious and coordinated and just like pump and dump. But the thing that I like about the group that I'm in is everyone in this space seems to have a sense of integrity, and that if somebody does talk like that, like, oh, we should do this, most people kind of shoot them down because they want to have a certain level of professionalism. And also, if they're influencers, their reputations are on the line too. So they don't want to be like wasting their reputation capital on like stupid projects or stupid like things, manipulating things.
They're long-term thinking about their long-term greedy, which is perfectly fine, which is like over the long term, being an honest broker in fair trade is a much more profitable endeavor than these quick scam and fraud flipping, pump and dump, these rug pull things and all that. No, I agree. I agree with that.
So it's just interesting because I'll have like one chat going on my computer and then I'll have the other one going on my phone. And they're talking about like if a project's minting, the high level people are talking about it. They're talking about, okay, what's going on now? Okay, they're doing this. And then when it gets into the selling, they're talking about, okay, this is the floor price, like how many do you have? And then they're also sharing information about the project as it's coming out. And so sometimes there'll be something where the people in the group have decided to go in on a project, and then all of a sudden someone will get information that like, oh, this is a rug pull, like don't mint, like don't waste your money, like, or the other people will come in and they'll be like, oh, this other project, like it seems kind of sketchy to me. And then they actually find out that information. And and they share it to us because we're in like the groups. But the
Okay.
normal people, like they,
They don't know.
so, well, somebody can go into a chat and say, "This is a rug, don't mint," and that could be a legitimate person, or it could be a bot.
That's what I
So
was gonna say, is because
yeah,
you're just
yeah,
describing. I was like, the dragon people are using this behavior and they're saying it's a rug pull as a
yep,
way to filter out people.
yep.
And
That was what they did.
you had to decipher, is this, because you, when you saw it in the first time, you didn't know that they're testing you. You thought
Mm-mm.
it could be a bot, it could be legit, and you
Mm-hmm.
overcame those warning signs to get.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those interesting. They have this in like movies and stuff where they have like these secret lands where like
Mm-hmm.
there's all these like warning signs, like death is here and all this, like don't go no further and all these like things, and then actually you get there, it's like beautiful wonderland, or like
Yep.
what's that? It's like you go to Wakanda. You know, you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna run into a mountain, and then like you go through the invisible bubble, and this like beautiful like oasis is behind the illusion.
Yep.
And
That's how I
this is
felt.
so interesting.
That's
Well,
exactly how it felt.
that is so interesting. So you burst through, and I hope like with the pot with us like, you know, videotaping and recording it, you haven't like outed the system, but and you don't
But
get like
this was the first one that I saw, and then because of the success of this project, like overnight, all these other projects have started to kind of
copy
simulate
the
or like
style.
emulate that, yeah, emulate that style, and it's thinking that just by doing a stealth launch or doing something tricky, it's going to kind of have the same result, but it
It's a
hasn't so far.
combination of factors, right? It's a
Hmm.
combination of, is the art appealing? Is
Hmm.
the, like, so if we're to recap what's going on right now with the Dragon Group, what's the full title again?
Bo Ryoku dragons.
Bo Ryoku Dragons. I have all this
Hmm.
like disgusting uh, Japanese anime references in my head, and I'm like trying my best not to like have a tongue slip and say anything like that. I'm like, oh, Bukaki dragons. Oh, okay. No, so like, no. So with Boryoku dragons, we've got the art itself, right? Just like whoever's the artist who comes up with the initial style, right? Like the Simpsons
Hmm.
style or the South Park style or whatever the
Hmm.
anime style you choose. And then you've got the genetic, someone who's thinking about lineage and genetics and hereditary issues, things like that, right? There's a whole concept around that. Then you have
Hmm.
the tokenomics
Hmm.
around, basically like the same way like sperm banks have some sperm that's super expensive because everybody wants it, some MIT 6 foot pro athlete, genius athlete sperm, versus some guy with a bunch of like crappy genetics sperm, right? So like, I
Yeah.
mean, that's literally the issues, right? So you're looking at like, okay, I have a unique um what did you say, rainbow bomb, right?
Yeah.
So you've got that, you've got asymmetries of information. You've got like drip. Remember we were talking about last year about like dripping content? That was on
Hmm.
Instagram for your music career, which was like uh, part of the thing about some really successful social media people that you realize is they have a regular cadence of content. And so whether or not
Hmm.
they need to live their lives and go on vacation or whatever, at minimum, what they'll do is like pre-bank a lot of content and then just have it released on a timer, basically.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot of like applications on like Shopify that'll do that, and like this is the best time to like post an image or whatever. Um, and so, and then there's also, so they're like time releasing the information, and then there's also the whole botting issue, which is like how to, you just want the A players, people who are willing to like crawl through glass to get into the inside to be part of the supply group. And then the
Hmm.
rest of the normies who are like, I don't have time for this shit. I have like a normal job. I just want to enjoy what's the cool, hot art and I want to buy an NFT, I'll buy it on the secondary market and whatever. And so you've got the people who are, so it's a lot of systems that each have their own properties that have to come together that gives you a successful NFT project. And then you've got these others that like, maybe they have really cool art, maybe they have all this, you know, XYZ stuff, but like you were telling me the example of the rat one where they're like, no, they got super greedy and took 500 for themselves. And people were like, well, you've lost credibility because we don't trust you. And so the rest of your project, we're not even going to look at because you just came at us with this, you know, overly, you know, like a hoarding mentality to the NFT mint and like cartel-like behavior. And so this is a you know, on the one hand, you can look at this and say, okay, well, this is a joke, and I can't believe two guys in their 30s are spending hours discussing this on Zoom. Don't you guys have something better to do? But on the other hand, art and commerce have always gone together, right? Like it's like, if you know, I haven't read, on my list of things to read is Ogilvy's biography, like kind of revolutionized marketing in the 20th century. And I sincerely believe that like both NFTs are primitive, like are a foundational piece to the next generation of the internet. But even more than that, NFTs in specifically with the wedge of art, that's what's going to bring more people into the space. Nobody really gets super fired up about money. Like money is a thing that we need to pay for shit, but we're not sitting there like enjoying our money, right? We're enjoying art and content and fun. Like fun is what inspires behavior. And what's super interesting, especially with Discord and stuff, is the community aspect of it. And like, because art in and of itself is not intrinsically valuable unless people derive value in their hearts and minds. Whereas a car has value, it's moving stuff, it's physically moving something around, or like a water pump is pulling water, like well water out for us to drink. Like there's things that are driving value intrinsically, and then there's things that are driving value emotionally that are super valuable to us, but there's a human social component to it, and we won't enjoy, I think for the most part, most people don't enjoy art if they cannot share it with people. Like you don't want to watch a comedy alone in your room, maybe once in a while, but like comedies are better when you're in a theater laughing with a group. So there's so much to these NFT discussions that I get. Like I'm always like, every time we have a talk about it, my brain gets expanded. I don't think we got to any of the stuff that you sent me on the list. Is there anything else? Because I want to keep it tight. Is there anything else on our to-do list that we should go over this week?
I mean, we kind of talked about a lot of the stuff that I was thinking about. I think the biggest thing that people need to know is that the NFT projects have like different categories, and you have to figure out like what those categories are and how to recognize them, and which ones are, and on top of which ones are legitimate projects and which ones are rugs or other things like that. So you have to distinguish the categories from each other, and then you decide which one's important to you, and then actually see like if it's worth it to you.
Okay, now here's my proposal is we're gonna go through this exercise. You're already going through this exercise yourself, and I'm doing it with my other crypto projects, my other Web3 like tokens and stuff. And in our Discord, you can see me actively when I'm like having bursts of like, I've had coffee and I'll have a 2-3 hour burst of like productivity, and then I go into like remission where I'll just like ruminate and marinate on it. Like the ideas will marinate, and then a day or two later I'll have another burst of like concepts and ideas and whatever. But I'm maintaining so what I suggest, the next step for you is, okay, we've got these videos we're making. I think you should, like Rolling Stone magazine or any of these other magazines originally like came out with like reviews of albums, right? And their tastes and what they like, what they don't like. I think you should weekly come up with, you can keep the same projects on the list, but you should just have the list you're going to maintain yourself, like write your reviews. And I bet you other people would find it valuable to see like your analysis of things. And so whatever, you can do a 1-pager once a week, and it'll be like your own homework assignment to keep you like a deadline. Like this conversation was a massive deadline for me. I like raced to the office even though the internet didn't work, but it was super valuable to me because like things just like drag on and I won't get to it. Like I still haven't even bought Arweave yet. Like I've been trying to buy it for like a month or two and I just haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, I need to learn more DEX stuff, and I keep telling myself, because this group, they do a lot of that. They find the small market caps, because they're not just sharing alpha, the information on NFT projects, they're also sharing it on coins and staking opportunities and all these other things in crypto.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like, I'm like, dang, I need to really nail down how to use like these Solana dexes and how to specifically get in on the projects that they tell people to get in on, because every single time they've told me, look at this, and I look into it, I'm like, that looks interesting. Then it shoots up.
Yeah, we're in a double. I think there's at least a minimum 2 super strong drivers in the markets we're in right now. One is we are in the early days of an S curve, and there's like frenetic creative energy, and we're in such a useful new version of the internet. Like Web3 is so useful, and it can basically go in any direction. So you can be the first, like when the West was settled, you could have made one of 200 towns and they all worked. Like Eureka, California is still there. Like Modesto is there, and Long Beach is there, and all these towns. And like, okay, you didn't found LA, you didn't found San Francisco, but you did become the founding father of some random town. And so like, there's all these like micro projects. Like your 14 million market cap NFT is basically nothing in the market cap of NFTs, and or maybe it's something in the market cap of NFTs, but it's nothing in the market cap of crypto. And crypto is still tiny in the market cap of world GDP and the internet in general. And so like, you can have massive wins in things that are so obscure, because basically everything on the internet is being shifted over to Web3, and then everything in the world is basically going to start to be represented in the internet. Like lands and titles and all that stuff are starting to be like CityDAO that I joined back when it first created. I was like one of the first people in that Discord, and I was chatting with the guy. It's so funny because I like got overwhelmed with all the like text in the Discord, and I like just deleted the Discord. They literally like own land in Wyoming now, right? And so all of my guess is the most of human civilization GDP will be represented on chain at some point, right? So and then that's the main variable, which is like, this is a mega trend that is got a lot of momentum behind it. And then the second thing is there's also the fact that the government printed an assload of money, and so that's just flooding into the crypto markets because every asset is exploding. And so I'd like to see what happens with the crypto markets over the next couple of years as people's purchasing power gets compressed. So you have all these people who are, McDonald's, you're making like $8 an hour, and now they're offering like $20 an hour, like overnight, right? So like, you have all these like people who have initially more like transfer from the government and then more money, but then they don't realize that like, and so everybody has this temporary wealth effect where last year, everybody feels richer because all their assets are worth more. and then they don't realize that actually the prices of everything has just gone up a lot, and so the purchasing power is actually going to get compressed, and then this is just like an inflationary bubble. And so part of crypto, at least some percentage of it, I don't know what percentage of the crypto explosion that we're seeing, like the price explosion, is at least asset inflation, like just dollar, if it was all denominated in Bitcoin, it would be collapsing because Bitcoin prices have been going up. So like, it feels rich, but it's partly because we're thinking about it, we're converting it into dollars, and the government is inflating the hell out of dollars. But if we think about it only on its own terms, like if we think about projects in Sol, then it makes more sense. Like you were talking about the project, the rat project that started at 5 Sol and went down to 1. That's to me a more fair. You can actually see, okay, this project is still alive, but it dropped 80%. But if Solana goes up 5x from now, on dollar terms, that rat project is like great, right? Because it was you bought an asset that's denominated in Solana. So,
and that's what NFTs are becoming, like a store of value. Like it's not
in a currency that you want.
In the network that you bought them on. And like obviously the value of those NFTs can go up and down, but as the price of the
underlying
network in the cryptocurrency increases, then in dollar amounts it's larger and larger amounts.
And so this is the thing, this is the classic you're sailing on the ocean and you're going at your speed, but you don't realize that the current itself is pushing you along. And so you've got this tailwind of the asset being denominated in a currency or a token or whatever, that in and of itself is accelerating. And so we're in this transition zone where it feels enormous, because everything that we experience in the real world today is denominated basically in fiat currencies. And so I'm like, oh, I can buy 100 more coffees for what I just got. And those ENS coins that they dropped in my thing, I'm like, oh, I can like live in Bali for free, basically. Like I could use that money to live in Bali for another like 2 years. That's awesome. But eventually the transition will wash it through, and we'll have a more realistic understanding of that. Was the biggest problem with inflation for me, is like it completely distorts my understanding of how much value was created. Like when I see like crazy high pops on stocks and things, and I'm like, well, the government just printed like half of all the currency, so how much of it is just that, like, and then and how much of it is, oh, this company is actually crushing it and should be valued at X amount. Dude, this was a great conversation. I hope we didn't run it too long, but we will continue next week.
Okay.
All right, man.
It's always fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. Chat soon.
All right.
Bye.
I'll talk to you later. Bye.